Before we dive in, tell me where you're listening from and what pulled you into this story. If it spoke to you, drop a comment. Your words help keep history's forgotten voices alive. History doesn't announce itself. It looks like this. A stretch of scorched earth in rural Uttar Pradesh. Heat ripples across the ground like a living thing. Dust rises with every breath, every movement, hanging in the air like a warning. And then a figure steps into view, bare feet, red sari, a rifle slung over one shoulder as casually as another woman might carry groceries, a face carved by sun and suffering, but eyes alive with something no one ever managed to extinguish. This is Phoolan Devi, India's bandit queen, India's nightmare, India's daughter, India's reckoning, the woman the newspapers called a monster, the woman the poor called a goddess, the woman the government didn't know how to categorize, so they tried again and again to bury her under a name they could control. But legends don't stay buried, they burn. And before Phoolan Devi becomes the outlaw who would hold an entire nation's attention hostage, before she becomes a parliament member, a political symbol, a myth, she is something far more dangerous, a girl the world tried to destroy, who refused to stay destroyed, because this story doesn't start with a robbery, or a kidnapping, or revenge. It starts with a wound. It starts in a village where a girl learned the first rule of survival. No one is coming to save you, so save yourself. Phoolan Devi. From child bride to parliament, the revenge. No one saw coming the outlaw who refused to die. Phoolan Devi was born in 1963 in a tiny village so small it barely existed on maps, a place where dust clung to everything, the fields, the huts, the people, the future. Her family belonged to a low caste. Her home was a mud hut. Her toys were the stones at her feet. Her first lessons were learned in hunger, and yet from the beginning she was fire, not gentle, not obedient, not quiet. She argued with boys, she defended her sisters, she confronted adult men when they stole from her father. A boldness that shocked the village, outraged the elders, and terrified the people who understood what it meant for a girl to be too visible. Phoolan learned early what society expected of girls like her. Keep your head down, keep your voice low, keep your dreams small. She failed at all 3. Her father's land, precious, limited, lifeblood, was stolen by male relatives. Phoolan protested. She marched to the police station. She demanded justice. But justice in India, especially for poor girls, is a myth whispered to keep the powerless docile. The police laughed, the neighbors sneered, relatives beat her for misbehaving, and her reputation, the most fragile thing a young girl possesses, was cracked beyond repair. Phoolan learned another rule. When you fight for yourself, people decide you deserve what happens next. And what happened next was something no child should endure. She was married off at 11 to a man in his 30s, a stranger, a husband in name only, a predator behind closed doors. It was called marriage, but we know what it was. Yet even then, even in that bed where she slept, curled in fear, she refused to disappear. Phoolan ran away again and again and again. But a girl who runs has no sanctuary. Villagers dragged her back by her hair. The police blamed her for shaming her family. Her husband beat her harder for embarrassing him. The world learned she wasn't obedient. She learned the world didn't care. Still, she didn't break. She carried something inside her no one could take, an ember, a spark of defiance, a belief that her life was hers. And when that spark meets the wrong kind of wind, it turns into a wildfire, the kind that reshapes the land, the kind that burns down what tried to contain it. This is where the myth begins, where the girl becomes something harder, sharper, unforgiving. This is where Phoolan Devi steps onto the path that will turn her into the bandit queen, and the world has no idea what's coming. Kidnapped by bandits, claimed by destiny. The moment the world tried to erase her and accidentally created a legend. The turning point of Phoolan Devi's life doesn't come softly. It doesn't come kindly. It arrives the way storms arrive on the dry plains of Uttar Pradesh, sudden, violent, and impossible to outrun. Phoolan is barely a teenager when it happens. The men arrive on horses and motorcycles, guns slung casually as though they were farm tools. They surround her. They drag her into the dust. They shout orders she can't process. She tries to scream. She tries to fight. She tries to claw her way out of the hands that pin her arms, her wrists, her fate. But the truth crashes over her like heat. She is being taken. She is alone. No one is coming. These men are bandits from the ravines, the legendary dacoits whose names mothers whisper when they want their children to behave. To the poor, they are rebels. To the rich, they are monsters. To the police, they are targets. To Phoolan, they are the architects of her next life. She is hauled into the Chambal ravines, that labyrinth of canyons and caves where even sunlight seems afraid to enter. This is a world ruled not by laws, but by men with guns and grudges. And once again, a girl's body becomes a battlefield for other people's power. But here's where the story shifts. Here in this brutal place, the same ravines that have swallowed kings, criminals, and legends, Phoolan does not surrender. Another man might have broken her, another village might have erased her, another world might have killed her spirit. But the ravines, they forge her, they introduce her to a man she never expected, Vikram Malla. Not a saint, not his savior, but a bandit with enough humanity to see what others refused to see. Phoolan was not ruined. Phoolan was unfinished. He protects her when the gang turns violent. He defends her when others try to harm her. He trains her, Aishka, with guns, grit, and the understanding that survival is not passive. Survival is a weapon. And in that furnace, something impossible happens. A partnership is born. People will romanticize it later, call it love or fate or rebellion stitched into destiny. But the truth is sharper. Vikram Malla was the first man who didn't mistake Phoolan's suffering for weakness. He saw the anger, the intelligence, the power she had no place to put. And Phoolan? She saw something too, strength that didn't need to crush her to exist beside her. Together they become a force, whispered across villages like a warning carried by wind. Phoolan has joined the dacoits. Phoolan rides with Vikram. Phoolan is dangerous now, because now she has guns, she has allies, she has rage, she has purpose, and the ravines, those ancient red-walled corridors of dust and death, echo with the birth of something new. A girl rewriting her name. A girl becoming a weapon. A girl stepping toward revenge. The same men who stole her childhood will soon learn what it means to fear the girl they thought they destroyed. And when she turns her fury into action, when she leads raids, faces down corrupt police, and becomes the nightmare of the men who once owned her fate, India will give her a new name, Bandit Queen, not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. And the story? It's only about to get darker, richer, more uncontrollable. The massacre at Behmai. When vengeance changed course. Vikram Malla's presence in Phoolan's life is a spark. Bright, warm, unexpected. But sparks don't last forever in a world built on violence. And the Chambal ravines, they are always hungry. The loss that split her life in two. It happens the way betrayals always happen, from inside the house. A rival faction storms their hideout, shouting, gunfire, chaos tearing the night apart. They kill Vikram Malla, just kill him, like he's disposable, like he's a footnote, like he's not the first person who ever looked at Phoolan and saw a human being instead of a possession. He dies in front of her, and something inside her dies too, but something else, something ancient, feral, volcanic, comes to life. This is the night India stops calling her victim and starts calling her threat. The ravines become her throne. Phoolan disappears into the canyons, not running, gathering. She recruits men who knew Vikram. Men who owe her loyalty. Men who recognize the steel in her eyes and understand a truth the government will never admit. A woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous outlaw on earth. She sharpens her aim, she sharpens her instincts, she sharpens her fury, and all of it, every bruise, every memory, every scar, points toward one place, Bemai, the village where her childhood ended, the village where she was humiliated, beaten, abused, the village where the men who murdered Vikram live freely, smugly, arrogantly. Bemai is not just a location, it's a wound, and Phoolan decides the wound must be answered. The night the Bandit Queen came, it's February 14, 1981. While the rest of the world sells roses, Phoolan carries rifles. She marches into Bemai with her gang behind her, the way storms march across the plains, loud, sudden, and refusing to ask permission. Families scatter, doors slam, men grab whatever they can to hide behind. But Phoolan? She doesn't hide. She walks straight down the village's main path, dust swirling around her bare feet, as if the ground itself is parting in respect. She calls out the names of the men who hurt her. She demands they step forward. She demands justice in the only currency Bemai ever offered her, fear. Some run, some deny, some beg, and some face her. Shots ring through the night. A red glow pulses against the mud walls, and history splits open. The story, the world will never agree on what exactly happened in Bemai is argued to this day. The number of victims, the motives, the details, but the truth is simpler than any headline. Phoolan Devi reclaimed what was stolen from her, and the world wasn't ready for a woman who refused to remain broken. Bemai becomes the mythic heart of her legend. The moment a girl who had been ignored, discarded, assaulted, underestimated, became a force India could no longer look away from. The newspapers call her a demon, the politicians call her a terrorist, the poor call her justice. And Phoolan, she becomes untouchable, unreachable, a ghost wearing a red sari and carrying a gun, a symbol too powerful to kill and too dangerous to leave alive. The Bandit Queen rises. After Bemai, she is no longer just a rebel. She is a shadow that haunts the government's sleep, a riddle the police cannot solve, a fire the country cannot extinguish. Phoolan Devi, once a child bride with no voice, now controls entire swaths of the ravines, but fires burn hot, not long, and the flames she lit in Bemai are about to set India on a collision course with the woman who remade herself out of the ashes of her past. The surrender that stopped a nation. The problem with becoming a myth is this: myths don't get to rest. After Bemai, Phoolan Devi is no longer just a bandit. She becomes a national obsession, a ghost story whispered in police barracks, a symbol of revenge in village courtyards, a puzzle in political chambers where men in starched white shirts pretend they understand justice. India needs her captured. India needs her explained. India needs her contained. But the ravines aren't a landscape, they're a shield. Phoolan moves through them like smoke, appearing in one district, vanished in another, a rumor in one village, a warning in the next. The police throw thousands of officers at the problem. Entire squads vanish into gullies carved by floodwaters centuries before they were born. Some desert, some defect. Some swear they saw her walking across a ledge like she had been born from the stone itself. Because here's the thing, it's hard to catch a woman who no longer fears being hunted. The world tries to define her. She keeps redefining herself. To the poor in rural India, she's a folk hero, a woman who turned her pain into justice and her trauma into thunder. To the government, she's chaos, a reminder that the oppressed can at any moment decide they've had enough. To journalists, she's a headline that never stops selling. To Phoolan herself, she is just a woman trying to survive a life she didn't choose. The negotiations begin. Years pass. India changes. Governments fall, rise, fall again. But Phoolan remains. Finally, with pressure mounting and the ravines growing more dangerous as rival gangs multiply, a deal begins to whisper through political office corridors. What if the Bandit Queen surrendered? What if she walked out of the ravines freely in exchange for mercy? Sounds simple. It isn't, because Phoolan has one requirement, one demand, one line drawn in blood. She will surrender, but only if the government promises not to execute her men, not herself, not her fate, their fate. This is the part of the story people forget. the loyalty, the ferocity, the refusal to abandon those who followed her when she had nothing but rage and resolve. It's the kind of loyalty men in power claim to admire, but never expect from a woman they've already turned into a villain. The day the world stood still, February 12, 1983, 11 years after she first fled into the ravines. 10,000 people gather in the small town of Bind. Police form a perimeter strong enough to protect a visiting head of state. Helicopters circle the sky. Journalists climb whatever they can find to get a better view. Then, a stir in the crowd, a silence, a single, collective exhale. Phoolan Devi appears. She isn't in disguise. She isn't in chains. She isn't running. She is walking, slowly, deliberately, like a queen returning to claim her throne. A red sari wraps her small frame. A rifle rests across her shoulders like a reminder. I came here on my terms. When she reaches the platform, she does something no one has predicted. She kneels, not to surrender her dignity, but to surrender her guns, her power, her myth. The moment is biblical. A woman the country cannot control, lowering herself before a state that cannot comprehend her. The bandit queen becomes a prisoner. The police swarm, cameras crackle, the crowd roars. Phoolan Devi rises and allows herself to be arrested. No fear, no apology, no shame. Just a strange calm, the kind that settles when you have already survived the worst the world can do to you. And as they lead her away, shackles biting into her wrists, someone in the crowd shouts, "Long live the bandit queen!" Another answers, "She surrendered, but she won." And maybe she did. Because for the first time in her life, Phoolan Devi is not being dragged. She is choosing. A woman who was once traded like property, beaten like an animal, hunted like a criminal, has just forced the world to negotiate with her. And now the real fight begins, because captivity can cage a body, but it can't cage a myth. Prison, politics, and the rebirth of a legend. The moment the shackles close around her wrists, India breathes a sigh of relief. Finally, the newspapers say, finally, the police mutter, finally, the government declares, the bandit queen is caged. But here is the problem with cages: they don't work on legends. Prison was supposed to break her. Instead, it strengthened her. Phoolan Devi enters jail as something half myth, half mortal, a killer, a victim, a folk hero, a political inconvenience. But then the journalists come, then the activists come, then the feminists come. They sit across from her. This thin woman with calloused hands, shy eyes, and the kind of quiet that makes people underestimate the storm inside her. And they start asking questions, and suddenly a different story begins to surface. Not the story of a ruthless outlaw, but the story of a girl who was failed at every turn by a system designed only to protect the powerful. A girl sold into marriage at 11, raped by landlords who faced no punishment, beaten by police who shook hands with her abusers, forced into the ravines because there was nowhere else to go. And the world begins to ask a new question. What happens when the real criminals wear uniforms? Her interviews turn the prison walls transparent. Phoolan Devi, once feared, becomes understood. Students protest for her. Women's rights groups petition for her. Her name becomes a rallying cry for the oppressed. And quietly, over the years, she transforms again. She reads, she studies. She listens to the stories of other inmates, other women, who had nowhere else to go, and she realizes something profound. Her story is not rare, only her revenge was. 11 years behind bars. That's how long the bandit queen sits in prison, 11 years, no trial, no sentence, just political limbo, because the government wants her forgotten and the public won't let her disappear. Finally, in 1994, a new wave of politicians comes into power, and one of them wants to send a message to the nation. Justice cannot exist without mercy. Phoolan Devi is released, walks out the same way she walked into her surrender, deliberate, steady, unbroken. A woman who survived rape, revenge, rebellion, and imprisonment now stands on the courthouse steps, blinking into sunlight like she is seeing the world for the first time. and the world looks back at her with something shocking: hope. Because India is changing. The poor are demanding representation, women are demanding justice. And Phoolan Devi, outlaw, survivor, symbol, has become the perfect voice for the unheard. The bandit queen runs for office. When word spreads that she's been offered a place in a political party, the reaction is volcanic: outrage, shock, admiration, fear. How can a former bandit run for parliament? Because the people who vote for her have met bandits far more dangerous in suits. Villages welcome her like a daughter returned from war. Women touch her feet. Men listen when she speaks about corruption, abuse, inequality, broken caste systems. She wins a seat in India's parliament with a majority so large it stuns the elite. Phoolan Devi, and once hunted by police, now walks the halls of power with a ministerial sash across her chest. And here's the twist most politicians never saw coming. She is good at it, really good. She champions women's rights. She fights for lower castes. She advocates for prison reform. She exposes corruption. She signs documents with hands that once held weapons. People don't fear her anymore. They trust her. For the first time in her life, Phoolan Devi is not running. She is building. A home, a future, a legacy. And for a moment, just a moment, it looks like the bandit queen has finally outrun the violence that shaped her. But myths don't get happy endings. They get finales. Assassination and aftermath. The queen falls, but the story refuses to die. For 7 years, Phoolan Devi sits in parliament beneath the fluorescent lights and slow-moving ceiling fans, learning how power works on the inside, not with guns, not with ravines, not with fear, but with signatures, with alliances, with laws that could protect girls who were once just like her. And as she works, something strange happens. People begin to believe change is possible. Women from villages travel miles just to glimpse her. Men who once whispered her name in fear now greet her with folded hands. Newspapers print photos of her smiling, something India has rarely seen from her. For the first time in her life, she isn't hunted, she isn't hiding, she isn't surviving, she is living. But peace is a dangerous luxury for a woman who once embodied rebellion. Her past never forgets her, her enemies never forgive her, and India, fractured by caste, politics and old grudges, never lets a legend rest. The threats begin quietly. A letter slipped under a door, a rumour whispered in parliament hallways, a journalist asking if she fears revenge from families of the men she killed decades ago. Phoolan shrugs it off. "I have already died once," she says. And she means it. The girl she was, the child bride, the rape victim, the fugitive, died long before the world called her bandit queen. But the danger grows thicker like humidity before a monsoon. She receives death threats, she dismisses them. She refuses police protection. She walks alone into crowds that adore her as fiercely as they once feared her. Because Phoolan Devi only ever knew one way to live, unafraid. July 25th, 2001, New Delhi. The day is hot enough to melt tar. Motorcycles buzz like hornets. Her neighborhood hums with life. Street vendors shouting, children playing, dogs stalking shade. Phoolan steps out of her car in a simple sari, keys in hand, ready to walk into her home. A quiet place where she keeps photographs of her past lives. The bandit, the survivor, the parliamentarian. A motorcycle slows in front of her gate. 2 men, one lifts a gun. Time doesn't stop. It doesn't even slow. 5 shots crack the air. The bandit queen falls in broad daylight. Neighbors scream, dogs bark, children scatter like startled birds. India stands still. The news explodes through every home in the nation. Phoolan Devi, outlaw, parliamentarian, myth, miracle, assassinated at 37. A revenge killing, the police say. A settling of old debts. A political warning. A caste vendetta. India argues, India mourns, India divides, because her death is more than murder. It is a question: who gets to rewrite a woman's legacy, her enemies or herself? The funeral of a legend. Tens of thousands line the streets. Women cry as if they've lost a sister. Men place flowers along her procession route. Her coffin is draped in the tricolour flag, a symbol of honour the nation once denied her. From bandit to member of parliament, from fugitive to folk hero, from violated child to symbol of resistance, her funeral becomes not just grief, but reckoning. And then the aftermath begins. In the years that follow, movies retell her story, books reinterpret her motives, scholars debate whether she was villain or victim or avenger or something impossible to categorize. Activists call her a feminist icon, politicians call her a warning, villagers call her a saint. But the truth refuses easy packaging. Phoolan Devi was never one thing, never simple, never safe for public consumption. She was a wound and a weapon, a child ruined by men and a woman who made men fear her name, a victim of caste, gender, poverty and violence, and the product of every one of those forces colliding. Her death did not end her, it amplified her. Because every time a girl fights back, every time a woman refuses silence, every time a survivor becomes a symbol, someone whispers her name again, Bandit Queen, not as fear, not as insult, but as inheritance. Phoolan Devi died only once. Her story, however, keeps returning to life. Myth, memory, and the woman. India still doesn't know what to do with Phoolan Devi's death. Should have closed the book. A bullet, a funeral, a headline, but some people refuse ending lines. Some lives are structured like revolutions, unfinished, echoing, spreading, and Phoolan Devi is one of them. Myth number 1, she was a criminal. That's the version the wealthy prefer, the officials, the men who wrote her arrest orders, the ones who feared the idea of a lower caste woman holding a gun. It's easier to call her a criminal than to ask why she picked up the weapon in the first place. Phoolan Devi never learned justice from the law. She learned it from the ravines, from the empty promises of courts, from the laughter of men who believed they were untouchable, from the silence of a country that let a child fall into hell. Myth number 2, she was a hero. This version is romantic, the bandit queen as Robin Hood, as feminist avenger, as the champion of the oppressed. And yet that too is incomplete, because Phoolan Devi never claimed heroism. She claimed survival, she claimed rage, she claimed the right to exist in a world that tried to erase her. Heroism was a side effect. Myth number 3, she was a monster. This is the version told by those who lost power when she gained hers, men who believed caste made them gods, politicians who hated that she spoke too loudly, newspapers hungry for spectacle. But monsters are created, not born. Phoolan Devi was shaped by violence she never chose, marital violence, sexual violence, political violence, until she learned the only language the world listened to. So, who was she, really? A survivor? A strategist? A symbol of every woman the world dismissed until she became impossible to ignore. She was a child bride, a rape survivor, a fugitive, a gang leader, a folk hero, a prisoner, a member of parliament, a political target, a martyr. Who else in modern history has lived 8 lives in one lifetime? Her cultural legacy. Decades after her death, Phoolan Devi has become a cultural battlefield. Feminists claim her, nationalists weaponize her, filmmakers dramatize her, sociologists dissect her, politicians fear her ghost. And through all of it, one truth remains. She is the only woman in modern Indian history whose life story terrifies both misogynists and oppressors. Because Phoolan Devi forces uncomfortable questions. What happens when the forgotten fight back? What happens when a woman refuses caste, gender, and class boundaries? What happens when vengeance is the only justice available? Phoolan Devi didn't fit into the categories society offered her. So she built her own, the final myth. She is gone. Phoolan Devi is still alive. She lives every time a Dalit girl demands justice. Every time a survivor refuses shame. Every time a woman rejected by society claws her way back into power. Every time someone looks at the system and decides to stop asking for permission. Her body is gone. Her legend is not. Because legends don't die. they recruit. The Bandit Queen's real gift. She didn't teach people how to fight. She taught them something far more dangerous: how to stop apologizing for surviving. Phoolan Devi remains what India never wanted but always needed: a woman too loud for silence, too angry for obedience, too powerful to forget. A woman who carried every wound, every injustice, every scar, and turned them into a crown built from grit, defiance, and fire. The Bandit Queen is dead. Long live the woman who refused to bow.
And that's where we leave her. On the page, in the archive, in the rumour, in the shadow she carved into history. Maybe she was a villain. Maybe she was a victim. Maybe she was something far more dangerous. A woman who refused the role she was handed. But one thing is certain. The world wasn't ready for her then, and it still isn't now. If you enjoyed falling down this rabbit hole of power, defiance, and the women history tried to bury, make sure you're here for the next chapter, because there are more of them, more rebels, more survivors, more legends disguised as scandals. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you were told, and keep an eye on the women they warned you about.